And welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lab, we're going to be introducing you to the Cloud9 integrated development environment. And this is one of the options that you can use as a development environment on AWS. You can also use your own integrated development environment on your desktop. For example, you might use Atom or Microsoft Visual Studio. But the advantage of using AWS Cloud9 is that it's hosted on AWS and it's a browser-based application, which really streamlines a lot of the integration with EC2. So it's very easy to deploy directly from your IDE a development environment for AWS and to launch your code and run your code on that development environment. Now, before we start using Cloud9, we need to have permission to use it. So we need to go into Services and IAM, and we're going to select a group, and we're going to apply permissions to that group. So I'll just select here the Administrators group. We select Permissions, and we attach a policy. So we can see there we've already got our Administrator Access policy, but that doesn't include Cloud9 access, so we need to also attach that as well. So we click on Attach Policy. And the policy type will be an AWS managed policy. And we just type in Cloud9. And there we can see we've got an AWS Cloud9 administrator policy that we can attach. So we just attach that policy. And there we can see that is ready to go. So now all we need to do is go into our Cloud9 service. So again, we go into Services and Cloud9. And if you haven't created a development environment yet, then you'll be presented with a welcome screen. So we just click on Create Environment here. We'll give our environment a name. And we won't worry about giving it a description. We'll go to our next step. Now, what we're going to do is our environment, we're going to create an instance that we're going to use for our development environment. So when we're working on code, we can deploy it directly to an EC2 instance. The instance type we want to do is a T2 micro to be on the free tier. A very good feature of Cloud9 is the cost saving setting. So what that means is that if you are not using your IDE for 30 minutes, then your EC2 instance will go into a hibernation mode and you won't be billed for that instance. And then when you go back and you restart or you reuse your development environment, then that EC2 instance will then come out of its hibernation mode. So you don't need to go back and clean up all your EC2 instances like you would do if you're using a normal IDE and launching it, for example, from a GitHub repository or whatever. The Cloud9 service needs a role to access EC2, and so there is one there already. We also have a network setting, so we can select the VPC and subnets that we want to deploy our EC2 server into. For now, we'll just leave it as a default VPC, and we'll click on Next Step. And there we can see there's a summary of it. We've got our name, the environment type, it's a T2 micro, it's going into a default subnet, and it's going to go into hibernation mode if we don't use it for 30 minutes. And we click on Create Environment. Now, after a certain amount of time, we're going to see that our Cloud9 development environment will have been created. And we can just check on that if we go back to the console. So just jump back into the console and we go to Services, EC2. We should see a EC2 instance that has been created. So just click on one running instance there we can see. And there we have our AWS Cloud9 Backspace Lab P Cody instance that has been created there. It's got a security group that has been created, and it's also got a public DNS. And a public IP. So that is really good because out of the box, we've got something that we can launch web applications onto, and that saves us a great deal of time. So let's have a look at the IDE itself. So we have a welcome screen here, and down the bottom here, we've got a console, and that is a console that's connected to that EC2 instance. So we don't need to use PuTTY, we don't need to use shell or anything to get in it. We have a shell environment here directly within the IDE that we can launch our commands into. If we scroll down here to the welcome screen, we can see that we can actually configure that with different, dark theme, a grey theme, whatever we want. We also have more settings here. So we have a look there under more settings, and we can see we can change that the EC2 instance to stop it after 30 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever we want to do. We can see a number of options for the code editor. Now, the code editor is ACE, which was formerly from memory called Mozilla Skywriter. So AWS have picked this up as an open source project and are developing it quite further. So it's got some great JavaScript support in there. It's got PHP, Python, Go. It's really good. And what I'm noticing with this is it's growing very rapidly. So I'm not going to talk too much about the settings in here because obviously it's very much a work in progress, and over time it will get more and more advanced. So I'm just going to run some commands in that shell environment down below. So the first thing I'm going to do is just check if Node has been launched or has been installed. So I'm just going to copy that over from the lab notes. Now, if we right click and we do paste, it doesn't work. If we go here and we do edit and paste, it's not working either. So some browsers it will work, some browsers it won't. So the only way I can get it to work from here is to do Control V, and that will bring that in. And so there we can see it's already installed Node out of the box for us at version 6.12. So the next thing we can do now is install the AWS JavaScript SDK onto this instance. So let's just quickly do a sudo yum update to make sure that our Linux operating system is up to date. So that's completed. Now we can install the JavaScript SDK. Okay, so that's done. So now we're ready to run code on this EC2 instance. So what we'll do is we'll do File, New File, and we're just going to do a hello world or console log hello world. And then we'll save that. So file save as, and we're going to call it just hello.js. Okay, so you can see there it's formatted that nicely with the color coding on our editor. All we need to do now is we can run that directly from here by just clicking on Run. And there you can go in our console screen. It has completed and it's console outputted hello world. So we've just run our first Node.js application on this instance. And we'll just Control C out of that. So I'll just close that file and I'll just delete it by going back to the console down the bottom here and just doing an rm command to remove hello.js. And it's gone there. So let's do a little bit more complicated application. So what I'm going to do now is just clone a repository that has just a sample Node.js application. So the details of this are in the lab notes. Just do a dir on that to see that worked. So there we can do. We can see we've got our Node.js sample application there. We'll cd into that. Okay, so we'll just do an npm install and then start it. And an npm start. So there we can see we have a Node app running at localhost 8080. Now the easiest way to view our application in the browser is to go at the top here and do preview running application. And there we can see it's our hello world has output there. So our Node app is running and we've got it there on the wider internet as well. So So let's have a go at editing this application. So we're going to Environment, and there we can see we've got our directory tree there. So we go into NodeJS sample, and we can go into our index.js application there. And what we'll do is we'll just go in and change the message there. So hello world from backspace. And we'll save that. And we'll run that again. And we refresh the screen. And we can see there we've got Hello World from Backspace Academy. So that's a pretty simple and easy introduction to Cloud9. I would strongly recommend you use Cloud9 if you want to get through the course quite quickly and you don't want to muck around too much with setting up an IDE and having all the connection issues and all that. You want to just jump onto a browser and start writing code and launching applications. This is going to be the quickest and easiest way to do that. So before we move on, I'll just clean up this environment and make sure that it's ready to go for the next lab. So we just go into Backspace Lab P-Cody again. And we can remove these. So we just delete. And delete that as well. And we'll delete that README as well. Okay, that brings us to the end of this lab. I'll see you in the next one.